Today, we're having part 3 of our Black Star Line panel on It Takes a Village, which is all about village schooling. And what other folks call homeschooling, we call it village schooling. Um, because the way we do it is always with a village. We're not trying to do it in isolation. We're not trying to do it only by ourselves. We didn't get in this world by ourselves. We don't maneuver through this world by ourselves. We don't develop our humanity by ourselves. And so we want to make sure our children are getting that same kind of edifying through the village and building a healthier village. So we talk about village schooling. And this is part 3, in which we'll be talking about resources. Let's see. Black Star Line is an organization that's been around formally since 2006. And we came together as a group of parents who wanted to intentionally educate our children. There was a lot of harm already experienced through public school systems, through independent school systems, well, not independent, but private school systems, let me say that more accurately. And wanted to do something on our own because we believe we had the skills and talent to do that within our village. And we saw the models of those that had did it before. So we gleaned off of the learnings from the Delaney School, the Garvey School, independent schools back east in Chicago and down in California that were doing phenomenal things with teaching our children not only academic, but culture and character development. So we proceeded to do some homeschooling as a village, and then we did realize probably halfway through our journey that we're really more a parent education and parent focused organization. And as we help parents better understand their capacity, who they are, what they've come to do with their children, then the children get educated through that primary teacher. And we also did preschool funded by the city of Seattle. And we've done and are doing rites of passage, well, transformational experiences with youth from 12 to 24. Did I miss anything? Who we are? Okay. Essentially, we're a bunch of Black parents, Black caregivers wanting to do right by our children. That's essentially who we are. Let's see. You also see in the last circle, last year, I think it was, we took our groups of participants to a civil rights tour as part of the ongoing learning as well, because we wanted to make sure they had experiential learning. So in a nutshell, that's who we are. And it wasn't until this year that we started to reframe our language from homeschooling to village schooling. Really, it was in the last few months. Both Aaron and Mike were on a call with Mother Maxine Mims, who asked a question: why do you all call it village schooling or homeschooling? Is that about right? Did I paraphrase too much?
Yeah, she asked us to consider that it's, as she was viewing what we were doing and what people like us were doing, she said it's more village schooling than it is homeschooling. Too narrow of a description. And we always have had to qualify it. We would say homeschooling, but we said, but we ain't even call home. We in the car, we at this event, we at that event, we utilize this resource, all of that.
So it really made sense to just change the language instead of trying to change people's paradigm of homeschooling. Because Maya's right, we would say, well, we homeschool, but Black Star Line homeschooling is this. What we really mean is you have to have a cohort, you have to have a village. We would say that out loud, like, who are the people in your village? Who are you working with? You should not do it by yourself. Like, that is not what homeschooling is. That's actually torture for everybody, right? We also talked about using the community as your learning laboratory. And there was so much more to just homeschooling than sitting at a kitchen table or any table with you and your child doing dittos and worksheets. And that was absolutely not what we were trying to promote or talk about. So it made sense when Dr. Mims said, hey, try this out. And you know what? because of her scholarship, her eldership, and her wisdom. She was so right. So from here on out, we'll be using village schooling, and we may slip up and talk about homeschooling just to maybe loosen our brains around it a little bit more, but it really is village schooling. And we hope that you all can adopt that ideology around it too. And so what we've been doing for these past three sessions is, on the first one, the panelists talked about their whys, what inspired them to homeschool or village school. And they talked about the assets that they brought to village schooling. They talked about some of their glimmers with homeschooling, the juicy, exciting parts around it. And then the second panel, the following Wednesday, the panelists spoke to how they actually did village schooling. It was the nuts and bolts. What strategies did they use? What were their approaches? What did it look like? And what were the experiences? And then they also talked about the mistakes of village schooling. And sadly to say, just kidding, gladly to say, everybody and their children survived all the mistakes. They all survived. Not only did they survive, but they end up thriving. They found the beauty in the mistakes and how that actually fostered a sense of character development and a sense of well-being that they could see today in their children and in themselves. So it was a great opportunity to watch that idea of a mistake turning into something as an opportunity. And then today we are committed to talking about resources for village schooling. What does it look like? How do you, okay, we got the why, we got some of the how, but now really for real, how do you village school? Like, where do I go for this and where do I go for that? Do I got to do everything? So we're going to have that kind of conversation today. How am I doing so far? Is that cool? Okay. So for our second centering thought, I would like to bring us back to a quote you might see on some of our publications. And it's from a person who, you know, one of our many who we adore, is Aikwe Arma. He's actually an author, a Ghanaian author. I will say personally, his writing to me seems more prophetic and more profound than just an author. And so this quote that we're using is really helpful in centering that we all have problems and we all have solutions. So I'm going to actually ask if I could have someone else's voice, like actually two readers, one to read the quote the first time and another to read it the second time. Would someone volunteer to do that, please? Can I get someone's voice on this?
I'll read.
Sure. Brother Alston and then Sister Erin. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Over these disastrous millennia, there have been Africans concerned to work out solutions to our problems and to act on them.
Thank you. Thank you. You ready?
Over these disastrous millennia, there have been Africans concerned to work out solutions to our problems and to act on them.
Ashe, yes. And needless to say, we're in the middle of a pandemic, multiple pandemics, one that's been going on for hundreds of years on these shores and beyond. The one that's been most crucial to our existence, one that we have had to constantly remember who we are in the throes of oppression. And we've always found solutions and we've always acted on them. I believe it is part of our ingenuity and our divinity to not be taken out by it. And so I feel like this is our call to keep acting on them. And in acting on them, it's how are we village schooling? You know, it's our action towards it, right? Because in Black Star Alliance approach, village schooling is not just about the children, it's very much about the adults. And so with that, I would love to introduce to you today's panelists. We have a guest on here as well, who's going to be part of our panelists. And I apologize, I didn't get his bio and stuff up on here beforehand. And maybe we'll just do a shout out from the three of us about who he is. First, I'd like to introduce you to Mai Dalila. She's one of the co-founders of Black Star Line, and her philosophy around homeschooling is to believe in giving a wide exposure to activities, travel, people, and spending lots of times on areas of passion. She also believes in applying a cultural and community context to everything. She believes in introducing mastery and then introducing challenges and rigor to what they define as important subjects. Our second panelist is Candace Hightower. Welcome. And she says her homeschooling style is based on her child's learning styles and her needs. And it's more of an eclectic combination of standard school curriculum and non-traditional education, but always through a lens of African and Indigenous centered perspectives. Yes. And then we have Adasha Turner, who is actually not here today. And she actually had an unfortunate circumstance in which her van caught on fire, and she was in it. So we do wish her loving kindness and wellness and safety. She's such an important part of the work that we've been doing, and she's dearly missed not being here. I did extend to her, feel free to pop in if you just want to come and get some of the loving juice that's in here. No need to participate. How can we support her? And I also, in my conversation with her, understood that there was a greater need. And to circle back to Ikwe Arma's quote, with all due respect to her situation and her she uses a wheelchair, and the van is a huge lifeline for her to get to and from her doctor, her medical appointments. And her van is out of commission. So I'm committing myself to supporting her in doing a financial ask to help her get back on her feet, because her being taken out of the game like this and not being able to play a pivotal role in her children's lives in a way that makes her feel like, why? Like, how do I stay on the top of this, how to say, swimming to the top of the rain is what I was thinking, and not be taken down by a fire in the car, and her health. So please look forward to a campaign to help get her back on her feet so that she can take care of her health and her children and be part of the village. And sending her loving kindness as well. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you for that, Marjan.
Yes. And then we have our guest, Ken Austin, and Brother Austin has been holding down the math technology in Seattle and beyond for over a decade and a half. And maybe closer to 3 decades, yeah? 3 decades, yeah. 3 decades. And I know our family was most appreciative of him because he welcomed us into his home to do math and chess and family and village building, into his parents' church. And he's just been so instrumental in figuring out problems, fun, practical, and real life math. Like, is honored. My children actually developed a love for math. The older, Louis Karianasha, because of him. So I'm eternally grateful, because math is one of those subjects that you're like, ooh, if you don't feel like you have it in your DNA, then I'm gonna just do what I need to get by. But brother also had the kids doing permutations, combinations, and they're like, what, maybe 8 to 10 years old, and working it out with real hands-on experience. So grateful, grateful, grateful. Anybody else want to share some edification for Brother Austin?
I think he embodies what village style learning is. He takes you in and you're a part of his village, and he loves on you, loves on the kids, and you know, you just feel, he always makes people feel good around him. And so that's important for me when you're around my kids. And I, you know, I love him for that. I really do. We said all the stuff, the math stuff.
Mhm. And I too am very grateful. Had a chance to be a part of the program a little bit when he was at, I can't remember what school that was in the central area, but actually had a chance to take advantage of the morning program for over a year at South Shore. And that, as a homeschooler, was amazing. We were able to start our day off, you know, like when did you have that class?
7:30 in the morning, something like that.
7:30, yeah, and 3 days a week, and his flexibility. I mean, of course, the content was incredible, but his flexibility in being able to take my child in because he was not a student at that school.
Wasn't in room, wasn't at all.
Right. Really speaks to when we have folks in our community in certain places, how they open doors for our community and open doors for our children. And so forever grateful around that. And I too have a person who holds his own very solidly around mathematics and arithmetic, even though that's not, you know, yeah. But yeah, he be bringing in the A's. He be bringing in, and so he can do other stuff, right? So I appreciate that. Thank you for what you did for our family.
And I also got to give shots out to Sister Marilyn and the children, because I know it's a whole package. And we love on your whole family, so thank you.
Okay. Zion, it was at Zion.
Zion Prep, that's right.
Zion Prep. So we were there for a minute as well. So thank you. We were just following you everywhere, brother.
That's right. Where Brother Austin goes, we go. So tell us about your organization, please, your work.
So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to see my sisters here. The last time you saw me, you probably knew that my name was Norman, and that name is no more. It was never who I was. My name is Akeem. Akeem. I traveled to Nigeria during the start of the pandemic. I was there about a month, from March to April. Before I left, I was renamed by a Nigerian family. And Akeem is a Yoruba name. I'm ethnically Yoruba, as I've discovered through a DNA test. And it means the courageous one, or the brave man, in the Yoruba language. So I've been adopted into a family. I have my own apartment in Lagos. I have a patriarch that has taken me in as a son. I have siblings. I miss them so much, and I plan to return to Africa very, very soon. But about my teaching, I would like to say to you that it began from a very, very dark, ugly place. A lot of abuse as a child. Home wasn't safe. School wasn't safe. Church wasn't safe. I didn't like adults. I probably still don't. But in any case, I always like to tell people that my teaching career was launched by a Black child. And no one probably remembers her anymore. But her name was Loetta Costin. And she was shot to death at the age of 9 years of age in front of Aki Kurosi School while minding her own business with her mother. My daughter was her schoolmate, her busmate. My mother was her daycare provider. And I myself don't ever remember having met her. But when I heard she was killed, I went through the community and begged for 2 months for the money to bury her and to assist the family. And out of reaction to that, I got involved in the schools. I became really concerned about my own daughter at that time. And so one thing led to another, and I became a teacher. So I've been teaching in the community since 1993. One young man who was also really, really close to me as a young student teacher, I call them TAs in my program. His name was Elijah Juan Brown. Him you may remember. He was killed in Skyway in 2010. And his mother and his sisters were a part of my work there. And they taught with me at Zion Prep back to back. And so when I think about who I am as a teacher and as a person, I see Black children. I see my ancestors that I have on this wall behind me. And I really don't think so much about what I do. I think more about what has been done and what I need to do. And the quote that you said was really, really awesome to me because it reminded me of A. Philip Randolph. He was a labor leader who marched with Dr. King. And he said, the salvation for a race, nation, or class must come from within. So if I see anything around me in my sphere of influence as it relates or reflects or impacts upon Black people and Black children, then I don't look for anybody to do anything. I look for me and about what I'm supposed to do, and then I just go to it. So years ago, my wife and I at Zion Prep founded the Saturday Math Academy. The academy migrated from Zion to the Rainier Vista Boys and Girls Club to South Shore, where it was most recently before the pandemic. And now we'll be online going into our 12th year. And my teaching philosophy is very eclectic. I'm a constructivist by nature, and my focus is experiential learning. I don't believe children learn by what adults say or do or tell them. They only learn by what we set them up to experience and what they themselves do. Nothing is true when I say it. It's only true when they say it. So I tell people all the time, it's not so much that I'm a great teacher. It's so much that Black children are great people and they enrich my lives. And I think people really miss that point. Marjan, you were saying that, we made some mistakes when we were doing our homeschool experience or our village method at home, but the kids survived. But the reason why they were able to survive the mistakes, because the people that were making the mistakes looked like them, understood them, didn't hurt them, and in fact, loved them. And so I tell people all the time, I love my people more than my own life. I swear it. And so I'm just excited to have been asked to be here. I have a lot to do. We all have a lot to do. And I didn't quite understand Candace's intent for asking me to be here. But quickly when I saw Marjan, I saw Mayette, and then I thought about their children when they were little. And then I'm like, well, of course, this is where I should be, however I'm to be here. So we're taking our program online. I do projects now all across the country with Black families now because of the pandemic. And I noted what you all said about parent education. And I also noted that I saw Dr. Maxine Mims, and she was one of the folks that I confided in years ago because she was Doug Wheeler's teacher when he was the founder of Zion. So all of us, we're just all connected like this. So every time I see a Black person anywhere on this planet, if she's older, it's mother. If he's older, it's father. And if they're about my age, as I reckon it, it's my brother or sister. If they're younger than me, it's my little brother or sister. I see Black people as all one group, and I do mean that sincerely, because most of us are West African, and a lot of us have a Nigerian and a Ghanaian ancestry. So I'm just here to do what I can do. I'm almost 60 now, and so I feel like with the time that I have left and that God may give to me, it's about legacy time. It's about trying to help Black people and about serving Black children. And lastly, I'll say this. A lot of what I do involves something that I call team, and I'll share it with you because it will make sense to you. TEAM, team. Teachers teaching each other arithmetic and mathematics. And we don't need the schools. It's an institution, a system. And institutions and systems fail Black people. They inherently do. So we have it well within our own ability. We're more than equal to the task to educate ourselves. So when you watch my work or when you see it, you'll see Candace's daughters or her nieces or other kids from the community who are middle school and high school teaching. And yes, they do get paid. They don't work for nothing, right? And so Black children, when they're older, they love younger Black children. They take them into their embrace. And so I'm trying to pass on to them this approach and this method. And that's what you'll see in my work. Thank you.
I love it, love it, love it, love it. And I do have some nephews who are teachers, and saw themselves as teachers, in your class, so I love it. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for this space right now. And I mean, I could say we done, but I know there's so much more. So I would love to carry on this conversation with all the other resources that the panelists have had. And I think because of the way the group is structured, we might be able to engage in a more open conversation around it and take some questions. I will ask that if you do have questions, type them in the chat, please, or give me a heads up. You can chat me and say I have a question, and that way we can unmute you and engage in a whole conversation. And as an FYI, we do plan on having a debrief next Wednesday and exploring more topics that come up about the village schooling experience for you guys. So I'd like to ask Maya about your resources for village schooling. And Candace, feel free to chime in, you know, and vibe off of each other.
I was actually going to ask Candace to go next, but we fight for it.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Go for it, Candace. I'll follow you. I'm gonna follow you.
How about this? Let's talk about the hub that you worked with around village schooling.
Oh,
And then what?
I had.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I did is that I guess that is a resource. When I decided to homeschool my youngest daughter, I decided to pull her out the school that she was at. It wasn't a good fit, and there were a lot of other parents who felt the school wasn't doing justice for their children, and those parents and us start talking. You know, we start talking to each other. It's the end of the school year, and we decided that we would, you know, we were putting our kids in private school, have resources as far as money to put together. You know, it wasn't as much. We didn't have to put as much as the tuition was, which was nice. So we decided that we would, all of us would put in a certain amount of money towards us pulling together to get our kids educated, you know, place to be, you know, because we all worked. So we needed a place for them to be. We needed to have a designated person to be with them because they're kids. We all used one of the parents' homes who had a basement, and that was a place they all went to study, learn things, collaborate. We made sure that we hired tutors to come in and tutor them, and we used resources from Seattle University students who were going to school to be teachers, who were looking for extra income to make. We also used grandparents with like cooking classes and what was the other thing they did? Oh, plants, botany, learning about, not botany, like science, but like making plants, planting things, learning how they grow, you know, that kind of thing with the grandparents. My mom she has a green thumb. So that was something, it was something that they liked too. So that was the one thing, is that we asked them to show them something they enjoyed. So it wasn't like a chore. Cause you know how somebody else's kids and grandparents are, or at least my kids' grandparents are, they will be annoyed. So that was, you know, it was something that they liked to show. So it was something they enjoyed and the kids liked too. We also use the Seattle School District. You know, I'm not ashamed to say I pay property taxes, so I pay into the system, so I'm going to use it. And so I, you know, use the homeschool program that they have way out in the north end, the only one they have, that lets you enroll your child into the Seattle Public Schools and allow your kid to go to some classes at school if they want. And then you can then do a hybrid of stuff you do at home. It also helped me with the reporting, because the school counselor did that for me. I just had to let them know what my daughter was studying. So that made it a lot easier for me too, for them to report to the state what my child was learning.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think people get stigmatized about using public school as if it's like all the way bad. You know, right. I think there could be said about using it skillfully, you know, and level of intention, and then using it so that your children you're reducing the harm that's happening in that institution.
Exactly.
Right. So that's really important to share out that we're not saying don't, we're saying use level of skillfulness. So I appreciate you bring that in, and with no shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's just certain things that I'm just, there's just certain, like, she needs to go to school for, and that's okay. It's not all day, and it lets you, because I don't want to keep my kid in a bubble either, because they're gonna have to go out into the real world and deal with people like that. They will, even if they're their own business, they have to. You have to interact with people, so you need to know how to maneuver in those situations. And so for her to go to 1 or 2 classes there, and then for the rest of the day she's, or other days she doesn't go there at all, just a couple of days a week, that's totally, it was totally doable for us, for sure. Yeah. And when you're there, you have to have an adult there with your child, unless they're in the 6th grade or older. So I felt fine her being her grandmother. I know she was fine with her grandmother. So, it was just like, I felt good because it was more of me being involved in what that would look like, or, how that would go. Some of the other parents would have hire someone to go pay somebody to be at the school with their kid. It just depends on your situation and, what you can do.
I think even with people who don't ascribe to a village schooling per se, they end up doing some kind of village schooling because they require that, right?
Mhm.
I know when we used a homeschool collaborative through the public schools in a different district, we intentionally, made a certain set of folks, to make sure that if I need to run off to a meeting or do some life stuff over here, that my children were cared for by people that I trusted.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like you have to trust the person driving that bus. You got to trust the kid. You have to put all this trust in a lot of strangers when you send your kid off to school. And I just feel like I felt more in control over the circle of people she was around, or the environment she was in, or how long she was in those environments. It was made me feel better, instead of off and then she coming back home telling me all this crazy stuff going on, and you feel so bad that you sent them there in the first place.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And how did you get connected with Brother Akin?
Oh, can I tell him the story, Mr. Austin?
So make sure you mention your great grandmother or your grandmother.
Okay.
This is going to be good. I can feel it already.
Okay, so Mr. Austin, I call you Mr. Austin, Mr. Austin. So Mr. Austin, my grandmother used to work for the Seattle School District as a kindergarten head kindergarten teacher, and she trained Mr. Austin to I believe when you first started, right? Yep.
I was a paraprofessional. I hadn't even gotten my teaching certification when I worked under her.
Mm-hmm. And so that is how we are connected. So when my daughters were going to South Shore, that's when he had the math academy there. And another really great lady, she she told me he was up there, and when he met me, he did you recognize my grandmother in my face, or I don't know how you knew.
I don't know how we made the connection. Well, I think she told us. She told us. She knew the connection.
Okay. And so she told us, and went from there. He was like, "Oh, you need to come." He just put his arm around me at that point, was like, "Oh yeah, bring your daughters." I think Carissa was in preschool at the time, but she was at Math Academy.
That's right. That's how it does. That's right. I love it. That is good.
Yeah.
Generational. It'd be in the DNA.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And you're still working with Math Academy right now?
Me?
Candace?
No, I took all this stuff. I took a second job. I did where I had time, but now my daughter has taken my place. I guess Cassia has taken my place. She works for math, the math program now. So
I love it. That's awesome.
So is math.
Do that.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Maya? What were some of the resources you used for village schooling your child?
Man, I tried to throw everything but the kitchen sink at the brother, right? Because once I figured out that once you have a baby, you have to feed them every day. And sometimes a couple of times a day, and then they want to learn something. And I remember talking to Marjan about, you know, because Marjan had already been homeschooling, and then Marjan be talking about, yeah, we can open up a whole school. And I'm thinking, man, that's a lot right there. But and then there were other people that had children around the same age, toddlers, right? They were coming of age. And we met. And we actually, one of our first meetings was with Dr. Zakia Stewart at our place. And she had done the Delaney School. She was an educator, incredible educator. She's with the Ancestors now, an incredible educator in her own right. And we picked her brain. And she said, you could do it. And she also was very much a believer of utilizing, as you talked about, Candace, the things that taxpayers, Black taxpayers pay for to the benefit of their children. And so we got together and we tried to figure this out. We talked about the reasons why we thought it was important and what we wanted for our children. And we were, you know, building the plane while we flew it. We started off and had a preschool and and also got some city funding to do some work with a cadre of 4-year-olds. And then the Collab Lab came into being after a preschool. And we just continue to come together and support one another. And we've had a couple of spaces in which we've paid rent to. And we've paid rent in a couple of different ways. Some of it is like, how much you got on it this month? You know, how much can you pay the light bills this month? When we were needing various teachers, whether they be English teachers, math teachers, science teachers, art teachers, language arts teachers, second language art teachers, we put some money on it. And pull them into the space. We are now located at Martin Luther King Community Center, but that village raising is for real. So having a group of parents and folks that are trying to do it together is incredibly supportive. And then you just realize all the things that are out there. As I said, definitely utilized, you know, the math program that Mr. Austin had, but also, as I said before, I didn't privilege arts over academics or athletics over athletics over art, right? And so a lot of his foundational, you know, was artistic in nature as well as athletic in nature. And, but there were times in which not only was he going to Mr. Austin's, he was a Kumon kid, and recently was wanting to get back in it because he went for a while, but it has definitely sustained him, and he's grounded in that. We hired several tutors. We utilized K-12, and I was very picky about which subjects we utilized it for. Science and math is what I ended up utilizing it for, but art went out real early, like in the first grade, the art curriculum went out. The history curriculum went out because there's so many beautiful writers in that are talking about the history of our people. I don't know why school districts are even trying to duplicate the work of a Dr. Clark, you know, when you can just pull out his book. So being able to use those kinds of things, and also there are other curriculums.
But
Yeah,
it's like, it's out there, and we hear of other people being able to get those resources, right? But what is it with you all as a parent that said, how do I get this resource? How did you even become aware that you needed the resource? Where to look? What was your connection to it? You know, do you get what I'm asking? Because there first has to be an idea. So I'm curious about that process of it too.
Well, for me, the process was that when I first decided I was going to homeschool, and because I was scared, you know, I'm just being honest. I was scared. So, like, I'm taking this child out of school, and everybody's gonna be mad at me because she ain't gonna know nothing. It's like, so I was.
Let's talk about that.
I know, but I was scared. But I decided that I needed resources for the things I knew. Being honest with myself, I lacked, that I knew I wouldn't be able to teach. Because there's certain things that I'm not able to teach that I know, but I can't teach it. And so I was just honest with myself, like, am I going to be able to show her how to do this? Because there's so many things that I've learned how to do all by myself. So I never had a reference on how it was taught to me. It's just something I figured out. And so those things I can't teach to people. So those are the things I knew I was going to need some resources for, something to pull from, because I wasn't going to be able to give it to the way she needed to learn it.
And then what was your next step after you realized that, okay, got it. I took inventory of myself. I'm not teaching that one. I'm not, trying to do this one. Now what? Because you could have sat like, Willie Lump up on a log and be like, well, figure it out, child. But I don't think that. Mm-hmm.
That's when you start talking to people. That's when, you can't, I had to tell you can't, like I said, I learned a lot of stuff on my own because I'll just do stuff on my own. I don't ask for help, but I knew that was not going to work. So I had to talk to people. And when you start talking to people, they're like, oh, I know, but then you just start, and those people who are on the same path as you, they start providing stuff that they've hopped upon. I started to follow homeschoolers. I started to look at YouTube stuff. I started to just pay it more attention to the teachers when they were, just all kind of stuff I would do just to pull from. But it was just like, at first I knew I wasn't, if I didn't have it in me. And then it was, well, I need to go seek it. I can't just stay in that place. I need to go seek what I don't have, sound right. I'll move on and figure it out. If it sounds right, let's try it. And it's also a lot of trial and error. This is not working. Let's try something else,
I like how you also brought in the last conversation that you used your child's awareness of what was working, what wasn't working, and the needs that they were wanting to attain as well into the process. Is that fair to say still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Austin's taught me there's so many different ways you can do math. It doesn't have to be a certain way. So if the way that I know how to do math is not working for you, let's figure out a different way for you to learn the same stuff, because there's a whole bunch of different ways to learn the same information,
Mm-hmm. That's a great concept, because he's taught not just the children, we taught the parents.
Yeah. I learned from that. Yes.
And there is this piece, I appreciate your questioning, Marjan, because there's this thing called grace and basic trust, that once you put your foot on that path, how come it keeps coming? Right? Like, people then tell you, and then you take advantage of the opportunity. So how I heard about Mr. Austin, I don't know. I do know that there were folks going to Kumon, and my mother knew about Kumon. I knew my kid had to know how to read, write, and do arithmetic. Right? So where's he gonna learn that and how to do that? And then the other stuff, he was bustling with his own interest. So when you see that, then I'm like seeking people that can do that for him in a way that works for me, that is culturally, clear, that is about boosting his competence and his conscious and his confidence, all of that. Is interested in the performance, but interested in the development of him as a person. So it's not just any math program. It's not just any athletic program. It's not just any dance program. There's a lens in which those choices are made, and people just come to you and tell you about these things. And a few things didn't work out, but 95% of the things that we were involved in were very helpful in being able to piece together his homeschool journey. And it was good. And I learned a lot.
Mhm. Mr. Austin, did you want to jump in and add anything around resources? And
I would. I think all of us are resources. All of us have some unique talent or gift, and being a part of the village, either I'm the village idiot or I'm the village elder. I mean, you have to be participating at some level. So all of us have something we're good at, or we specialize at, or we have some innate passion for. And children learn best from people who come from a place of love and passion. And so as I listen to Mayette, though, I'm thinking that so many of us, we're in silos, right? So, and I'm not, I'm an introvert by nature. I'm not political. I'm not a policy guy. And I really get tired of people who talk about what needs to be done, because all of us knew what needed to be done for the last 419 years. So if we would just do the things that we know as Black people, we wouldn't be looking or waiting for white people who don't care about us for solutions. That makes no sense. So if all of us all across this country would just say, this is what I can do, and this is what I can do, and then I'm just gonna do that thing that God gave me to do, and stop looking to get paid, stop looking to see what you're gonna get for it, stop seeing who wants to be the boss, because the children are the bosses, because I report to children. You're 5 years old, you can snap your finger and move me around like you need to. So it's just there. But because we're in silos, and especially even now, because I stay home all the time, we need people, and I would say who are younger than me, or people who just know how to organize, who know how to find people, help them and uplift them, and then create a backdrop. Because see, it's easier now to create a school than it ever was before, because you don't need that building. You don't need that structure. And you don't need someone telling you how to do it. And by God, if there was ever a time to start a school like this, it is now. Because the people who are not being served, the people that the school system is looking over, who aren't going online, who are tired of being parked in front of a screen, are Black people and brown people. And if anything was hard before then, how can it be better even now? So what they're showing us is that they didn't want us, they don't care for us. So please don't go back. Whenever it's time, whenever they say, y'all come back, say, oh, hell no, we're not. And so if you create the structure, it'll happen. See, it's guys like me all across the country. I am really no big deal, but we're in silos. And if you ask me to organize this whole thing, I'm gonna be like, what? You just give me some kids and point me in the right direction and I'll teach. But the rest of that stuff, I don't even want to hear about. But we do need people who are organizers now. That's how Barack Obama got elected president. Black people in this country have always been good at figuring things out of whole cloth, out of thin air, and taking nothing and doing great things. And this is the opportunity for us to remember who we have always been. Please don't go back to school. Back to school should never be about us. Create the structure and the process right now so y'all can actually export this model. And I'm talking to brothers and sisters all across the country right now, and they're asking me to pop up here, or you pop up in there. It's happening, it's very organic. And you know where most of it is coming from anyway. Down south, especially in Atlanta, back east, DC, that's where it's happening. But we need to get caught up. And so I just hope that we put a process and a structure around our people to say to them, don't ever go back. So back,
Amen.
You want to go back to chains? My ancestors didn't, they didn't go, it's forward. Forget about it. We don't need them. They don't want us.
Brother Reverend Pastor Austin in the house, amen and ashe. I'm so grateful. It couldn't have been said any better.
And when he said that there's conversations, I just want to, when he talks about like he is one of the people that also educates parents. I came to Baltimore, and I'm sitting up there, and how come I'm looking at folks that have the algebra project going on, and I'm going, where did I hear about that? Where did I read that book first? Mm-hmm. Through, in Seattle. So there are people that in our community that are passionate about everything your child could ever want to be involved in. If your child wants to do tiddlywinks, it's really the passion you want, to be quite honest. It's the passion, and that was definitely a criteria. Looking for folks that had a love of something that wanted to teach children. Because there are people that are doing stuff with kids that don't really like kids. I did run into a few folks like, and you wonder, why are you even doing this? But that passion piece, man, it doesn't matter what it is, actually. It really doesn't, you know? So I appreciate that conversation right there. Don't go.
Don't go back.
So I have two folks I want to just make sure we get their voices and say hello to. Let me get the young one in first. You gonna come in to say hi real quick? Okay.
Hi. I remember you vaguely. It's Asha. But I used to do tutoring and math stuff with Mr. Austin in like 6th grade, like 5th, 6th grade. My mom is really excited about what you're saying, especially because I ended up being an organizer. I ended up becoming an organizer. So yeah, incredible work. Incredible work. It definitely gave me a leg up in a lot of different parts of my life. So
This is what we see. Our ancestors want us to do these things for you. It's never about the generation in power right now. It's not about us. Everything, Asha, we do, it is all about you. It really is all about you. And if the rest of us are woke, we'd be looking at Black kids and not thinking about anything about what we're going to get. It's about y'all. My day is past. Only reason I'm here is because I'm supposed to do something for Black people. That's it. And I'm so glad to see you. I remember your little brother. I mean, he barely could walk when he was coming to the house some days.
That's
And
true.
now look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'd love to get Sister Adasha. How are you? So good to see you. Just want to give you some love and say hello.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you
Tasha.
for the space. It was reassuring. I was gonna jump in, but y'all got it. But even to chime in on, organization and passion, I think our children are naturally curious, and it's like they love to learn. And once we put people that are passionate about teaching and putting that together, that's something that, that's an energy that can't be disturbed. So as far as resources, as a parent and as the guardian of, this being, you can tap into what they're passionate about and what they love and link that to be your child's librarian as well, to source those out. And so there's so many resources out there. So being in a village, knowing people have the different capacities is just making that mega brain, for us to, connect those neurons and keep it moving and really point out the occlusions and get them out of the way. But, to keep that positivity going, because it's the energy that's going to keep it going is the children. And our is the child. So as long as they're engaged, that system, that's an infinity loop. You know what I mean? So we have to keep that going. But thank you for the space. And it was really nice to hear from the brother that's here.
Yes. And I will definitely say that what's coming up for me is the importance of knowing who you are, what assets you bring, so that you can be attuned to your children and what their needs are. Because sometimes our children will show their gifts and show what they need, so you can link them to the resources. But if we're tuned out of our own stuff, or we're consumed with other kinds of things, then our gaze can't be on our children in a way that gets them to the resources, or we don't even know what to look for and ask. So that's one thing that also came up. Another thing is that learning how to ask and have conversations is a real big piece. I know a lot of us have this thing, it's not real pride, it's like a false pride. Like we don't want to ask for help, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, and I know when I was struggling, going through some real difficult times, and I was acting like everything is all good, it's all okay. And everybody around me, my family was like, and it was humming all kinds of hymnals and prayers over me because they said she's losing her mind. She doesn't know she's going down the dark path. And then finally it just hit, and it's like, you know what? I can't hold it all. And thank God for the village, because they were able to help me make better decisions around my children's well-being, because I was busy trying to carry it all and I didn't have to. And so just knowing my own capacity, knowing my own threshold was pivotal for me, so I could ask for help. And I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for my aid. I really don't. She's my co-parent in life and everything. My daughters, my sons is like, man, they're lucky to have my eight in their life because it would have been a whole nother story. Even access to things like being able to play steel pans. I would have never thought about playing steel pans, you know, but something about the way we're linked together with other people and knowing my own shortcomings helped my children be better for that, right? I had my son kind of compartmentalize, like, well, this is what he does. But if it wasn't for the village and people like Candace saying, you know, your son's really polite. I would have thought that guy was the rudest little sucker. But no, it was just because I was his mom in the states that we were in. You know, every kid got that little moment, but I didn't know that that's what that was and that he was showing up differently in different spaces. So that pride piece, you know, that being able to ask for help is huge. And then knowing discernment about the resources, leaning back into Candace. I know, Mike, you said this a few times around your son, but knowing when it's not working, you know, when this resource, like, we got to change it up a little bit. Mike, I think he said he fired a couple of teachers on his own.
Didn't quite work. And I was one of them. I do not need you for this math, science, no more. That self-learning. And I wanted to go back to your whole piece around that reduction of harm. We're talking, as I think that we all know, but when we talk about community and the village, we're talking about the Black community, right? We're talking about the African-centered community. That's who we're looking at. But we also, those of us on this call that are homeschooling, did utilize dominant culture organizations and institutions. And I think doing that through a woke lens is very important. And when I think about the formula, it was about limiting time, right? It was about limiting the amount of time they are sitting in front of Becky or in, you know, Massa's place, right? Like, and being either, Candace spoke about my mama with them. I get that. My mom was alive during that time, or I'm with them, or Marjan is with them, right? Like, I believe that public schools is no place that a child should go without their parents, at least every day, right? Like, there's something about being able to mitigate that and utilizing it wisely and skillfully. And so, and like, we do have everything in our community. We also can have, and if we want to, have access to those other kinds of resources, but utilizing them with eyes wide open and so that we reduce harm, I think is really crucial, very crucial.
And with that said, I want to say the conversations will continue. They must go on. There's so much more to this. And we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. And it's going to get more and more juicy, more and more practical applications, as well as some of the theoretical, philosophical concepts around village schooling. And we invite you to continue coming every Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we'll be doing a full debrief of what the 3 panels were. And we are welcoming an open dialogue in which it's everybody's going to be participating, should you choose. And there's a QR code on the screen if you could see it. And it'll send you to the registration page if you haven't registered before, and it'll send you a Zoom number. And provided we don't have any harm coming our way into our space, it should stay the same. Topics that we'll be engaging in the future include village development, creative and collaborative active learning, curriculum and what it really is, self-awareness in village schooling, family dynamics, building support for the children, and many, many, many more. We've talked about schedules, we've talked about doing lesson plans, we've talked about the whole gamut. And we could start at the topical level and we could work our way through to a level of depth that is going to be really, 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 really fun. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm so grateful for you all being here. It's been so good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
And we like to end and close with intending meta for everyone, for ourselves, for others, and for the world. And we ask that you all be safe, that you all be healthy and happy, that you be free from fear and pain, and that you may be at peace.
Sure.
Ashe, and thank you. And Brother Ken Austin, I think I got your information in earlier. And if you want to check y'all's chat box, there's his website. Is that correct?
Yeah, our website is there and just some other information that will kind of give some people a sense about who I am and what I do.
Here we are. I encourage y'all to go visit. I love that he said they're going to be online. So accessibility needs met, done, and check. Beautiful conversation. So we're officially like ending it, and I'm going to hang out for a few more moments, maybe about 10 more minutes.